The icy waters of the Cheyenne River cut through Amelia Blackburn's skirts as she knelt at the edge, scrubbing the last of the blood from her father's shirt. It was 1876, a particularly warm spring in the Dakota Territory, and the homestead chores waited for no one, not even a 20-year-old woman whose father lay dying in their small cabin, just a half-mile's walk from the riverbank. "Come on now," she muttered, wringing the fabric with hands already red and raw from the cold water. "Just a little more." The sound of hoofbeats made her pause, fingers gripping the wet cotton. One rider approaching wouldn't be cause for concern, likely just a passing traveler or one of the neighboring homesteaders. But the sound multiplied, and soon she could distinguish the rhythm of 4 separate horses approaching from the east. Amelia rose slowly, water dripping from the shirt and pooling around her boots. The Dakota Territory wasn't known for its hospitality these days. Not with tensions high between settlers and natives, not with desperate men roaming the plains looking for easy prey, and certainly not for a woman alone by a river with the nearest town 5 miles away. 4 riders appeared over the rise, their horses slowing as they spotted her. Men with unshaven faces and hard eyes. Not locals, she knew most everyone within 20 miles of their homestead. These men wore the look of drifters, the kind who followed work camps and mining towns, the kind her father had always warned her about. Well, what do we have here? The first rider, a tall man with a scraggly red beard, pulled his horse to a stop and dismounted. A little lady doing her washing all by herself. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Amelia said, keeping her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She reached for the small knife tucked in her apron pocket, a poor defense, but better than nothing. "Just finishing up my chores before heading home." The second man, shorter with a scar across his cheek, laughed. "You hear that, boys? She's just doing her chores." He swung down from his saddle. "Maybe she'd like to do some chores for us too." The third and fourth men dismounted as well, forming a loose semicircle around her, cutting off her path back to the homestead. They weren't rushing, moving with the casual confidence of predators who knew their prey was trapped. "I don't want any trouble," Amelia said, taking a step backward, the cold river water now lapping at her ankles again. "My father is expecting me." "Your father can wait," the scarred man said, taking another step toward her. "We've been riding hard for days. Could use some hospitality." Amelia's hand closed around the knife. It was small, meant for cutting thread and mending, not for fighting off 4 grown men. But she'd not go without a fight. Her mother hadn't raised her to be a victim, and her father hadn't taught her to shoot and ride just for her to surrender at the first sign of danger. "Stay back," she warned, pulling the knife from her pocket. "I said I don't want trouble." The men laughed, exchanging glances. "Oh, she's got a little penknife." The third man, the youngest of the group with dark hair and a week's worth of stubble, snickered. "I'm positively terrified." "Put that down before you hurt yourself, sweetheart," the red-bearded man said, taking another step closer. "We're just looking for a little company is all. Gets lonely out on the trail." They were close enough now that Amelia could smell them sweat and horses and whiskey. The fourth man, who hadn't spoken yet, a balding fellow with small, mean eyes, reached for her arm. "Don't touch me," Amelia hissed, slashing with the knife. The blade caught his sleeve, tearing the fabric but missing flesh. The man's face darkened with anger. "You little—" The crack of a rifle shot cut through the air. All 5 of them froze. "I believe the lady said she doesn't want company." A deep voice called from atop the small ridge above the river. Amelia looked up, as did the 4 men. A lone rider sat atop a dappled gray stallion, rifle resting casually across his lap, the barrel still smoking slightly. He wore a brown slouch hat pulled low over his eyes, a dusty duster coat, and had the easy posture of a man entirely comfortable with the weapon in his hands. "This ain't your business, cowboy," the red-bearded man called, though Amelia noticed his hand had moved away from his gun belt. "When 4 men surround a lady by a river, I make it my business," the stranger replied, nudging his horse forward down the slope. As he drew closer, Amelia could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps late 20s, with a clean-shaven jaw and eyes the color of the Dakota sky in autumn. "We were just having a friendly conversation," the scarred man said, though he'd taken a step back. "Didn't look friendly from where I'm standing." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, keeping the rifle trained on the group. "Now, I'm a reasonable man, so I'm going to give you all about 10 seconds to get back on your horses and ride away." The 4 men exchanged glances, weighing their odds. "There's 4 of us and 1 of you," the red-bearded man said, though Amelia noted the hint of uncertainty in his voice. The stranger smiled, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. "I count 1 bullet for each of you, plus 1 to spare. Care to test if my aim is good enough?" There was a tense moment where Amelia thought it might come to bloodshed right there by the river. Then the youngest of the 4 spat on the ground. "Come on, boys. She ain't worth dying over." Slowly, reluctantly, they backed toward their horses. The red-bearded man was the last to mount up, fixing the stranger with a hard stare. "We'll remember you, mister." "I hope so," the stranger replied coolly. "Might save us both some trouble down the road." With a final venomous glance, the red-bearded man wheeled his horse around, and the 4 of them galloped away, kicking up dust as they disappeared over the rise. Amelia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, her knees suddenly weak with relief. The knife dropped from her trembling fingers into the shallow water at her feet. The stranger holstered his rifle in the saddle's scabbard and approached her, stopping a respectful distance away. "Are you hurt, madam?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. "No," Amelia managed, finding her voice. "No, I'm fine. Thanks to you." She looked up at him properly now that the danger had passed. His eyes were indeed a striking blue, set in a sun-weathered face that spoke of years spent outdoors. He was tall and lean, with broad shoulders and capable hands that had obviously seen hard work. "Nathan Whitlock," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "Just passing through on my way to Sierra Vista." "Amelia Blackburn," she replied, suddenly conscious of her sodden skirts and disheveled appearance. "My father and I have a homestead just over that rise." She gestured vaguely in the direction of home. Nathan nodded, then bent down to retrieve her father's shirt from where it had fallen into the water. He wrung it out and handed it back to her. "Thank you," she said, taking the damp garment. "Not just for this for what you did." "Those men, no need to thank me, Miss Blackburn." His voice was softer now. "No decent man would have ridden past." Many would have, Amelia thought, but didn't say. The territory was full of people who minded their own business, especially when it came to potential trouble. "Are you sure you're all right to get home?" he asked. "I'd be happy to escort you, just to make certain those men didn't circle back." Amelia hesitated. Under normal circumstances, she'd be wary of accepting help from a stranger, no matter how gallant his intervention had been. But with 4 angry men possibly still in the area, and her father too ill to come looking for her if she didn't return soon. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Whitlock. I would appreciate the company if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all." He offered a smile that transformed his serious face, bringing a warmth to his eyes that made Amelia's heart skip unexpectedly. "And please, call me Nathan." He collected his horse's reins and fell into step beside her as she gathered her washing things. As they walked toward her homestead, Amelia couldn't help wondering what twist of fate had brought this man to that precise spot at that precise moment. Whatever it was, she was grateful. Little did she know that this chance encounter by the river would change both their lives forever. The walk back to the Blackburn homestead was quiet, with Amelia stealing glances at the tall cowboy beside her. Nathan led his horse by the reins, his stride long and unhurried, eyes constantly scanning their surroundings with the watchfulness of someone accustomed to danger. "You mentioned you're headed to Sierra Vista," Amelia said, breaking the silence. "That's a fair distance from here." "About 2 days' ride if the weather holds," Nathan replied. "I have some business there." His tone didn't invite further questions, so Amelia didn't press. The Dakota Territory was full of men with pasts they preferred not to discuss. If he was running from something or someone, it wasn't her place to pry. As they crested the small rise, the Blackburn homestead came into view, a modest cabin with a small barn and corral, a vegetable garden to one side, and a chicken coop that her father had built the previous summer. It wasn't much, but it represented 3 years of backbreaking work since they'd claimed the land. "That's home," Amelia said with a touch of pride, despite the property's humble appearance. "You've made something good here," Nathan observed, genuine appreciation in his voice. "Good water source, decent grazing land sheltered from the north winds. My father chose it," she explained as they approached. "He has an eye for good land." "Your father sounds like a wise man." Amelia's expression clouded slightly. "He is. He's also very ill. That's why I was washing his shirts by the river. The fever causes night sweats and—" She trailed off, not wanting to burden a stranger with their troubles. Nathan's face softened with understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that." As they neared the cabin, the door swung open, and a frail figure appeared in the doorway. Samuel Blackburn, once a strapping man of considerable strength, now reduced by illness to a thin shadow of himself. He leaned heavily against the doorframe, a shotgun clutched in his trembling hands. "Amelia," he called, his voice raspy. "Who's that with you?" "It's all right, Pa." Amelia hurried forward, gently taking the shotgun from his unresisting hands. "This is Mr. Nathan Whitlock. He helped me at the river when some men were causing trouble." Samuel's tired eyes narrowed as he looked Nathan over. "What kind of trouble?" "Nothing I couldn't handle," Amelia said quickly, not wanting to worry her father. "4 men surrounded your daughter, sir," Nathan said frankly, ignoring Amelia's warning glance. "They had bad intentions. I happened to be passing by and encouraged them to move on." Samuel straightened as much as his weakened body would allow. "Then I owe you my thanks, Mr. Whitlock." He extended a hand that trembled slightly. "Any man who helps my Amelia is welcome here." Nathan shook the offered hand gently. "No thanks necessary, sir." Samuel swayed slightly, and Amelia quickly moved to support him. "Pa, you shouldn't be out of bed." "The doctor said—" "Doctors say a lot of things," Samuel grumbled, but allowed himself to be guided back inside. He glanced back at Nathan. "Will you stay for supper, Mr. Whitlock? It's the least we can offer." Before Nathan could respond, a coughing fit overtook Samuel, and Amelia cast an apologetic look over her shoulder as she helped her father back to his bed in the corner of the cabin's main room. Nathan remained outside, giving them privacy, tending to his horse and surveying the property with a practiced eye. The barn needed minor repairs, and the corral gate was hanging by a single hinge. The garden looked well tended, but the rest of the place showed signs of being maintained by people stretched too thin, not surprising if Samuel had been ill for some time. After a few minutes, Amelia emerged from the cabin, her expression weary but composed. "I apologize for that," she said. "His good days are fewer lately." "No need to apologize," Nathan replied. Your father's invitation stands. Would you join us for supper? It won't be fancy, but there's stew on the stove and I baked bread this morning." Nathan hesitated, clearly weighing his options. He'd planned to make more miles before nightfall, but the sun was already lowering in the west, and he could see that Amelia was struggling to maintain everything alone. "I'd be honored," he said finally. "And perhaps I could help with a few repairs around your place before I leave in the morning." Relief and gratitude washed over Amelia's face. "That's very kind, but you don't need to. I'd like to," he said simply. Amelia studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you. The barn roof has a leak and the corral gate, I noticed," Nathan said with a small smile. "I'll see to it after we eat." Over a simple but hearty meal of rabbit stew and freshly baked bread, Nathan learned more about the Blackburns. Samuel had been a schoolteacher back east before the war. After his wife died of scarlet fever, he'd brought Amelia west, drawn by the promise of free land under the Homestead Act. They'd been doing well until last winter, when Samuel had fallen ill with a persistent lung sickness that the local doctor couldn't cure. "Doc Jenkins says it might be consumption," Amelia said quietly while her father dozed in his bed across the room, his breathing labored even in sleep. "But Pa refuses to believe it, says he just needs time to recover his strength." "He seems like a stubborn man," Nathan observed. A small smile touched Amelia's lips. "The most stubborn. It's how we've survived out here." She glanced around their modest home. "But I don't know how much longer we can hold on. The crops need planting, the animals need tending, and I can only do so much alone." "You have no other family nearby?" "No neighbors who could help," Amelia shook her head. "Our nearest neighbors are the Petersons, about 3 miles east. They have their own homestead to maintain, though they've been kind enough to check on us when they can." She stared into her mug of coffee. "Pa's too proud to ask for more help." Nathan nodded, understanding the pride of a man not wanting to be a burden. He'd seen it often enough in his own father before the end. After supper, true to his word, Nathan set about mending the corral gate while there was still light. Amelia watched from the porch as he worked efficiently, his movements sure and practiced. When darkness fell, he moved to the barn, working by lantern light to patch the leaking roof. It was nearly midnight when he finally returned to the cabin. Amelia had made up a pallet for him near the hearth, the fire banked low for the night. "You should get some rest," she said, keeping her voice low to avoid waking her father. "You've done more than enough today." "Happy to help," Nathan replied, removing his hat and coat. "I'll be off at first light. Don't want to impose any longer than necessary." Amelia hesitated, then said, "Where will you go after Sierra Vista?" Nathan shrugged. "Wherever work takes me. I've been drifting for a while now." "What kind of work do you do?" "Whatever's available. Cattle driving, horse breaking, smithing when I can find it. I spent some time as a deputy in Colorado before heading north." He sat on the edge of the pallet, pulling off his boots. "What about you? What would you do if you weren't tied to this homestead?" The question seemed to surprise Amelia. I don't know. I've never really thought about it. This land is all Pa has left, all we have left." She glanced at her sleeping father. "Dreams are a luxury we can't afford right now." Nathan studied her in the dim firelight, the determination in her eyes, the strength in her posture, despite her evident exhaustion. Here was a woman holding everything together through sheer force of will. "Everyone should have dreams, Miss Blackburn," he said softly, "even in hard times." "Maybe especially then." Amelia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps you're right, Mr. Whitlock." She moved toward the small ladder leading to the loft where she slept. "Good night." "Good night, Miss Blackburn." As promised, Nathan rose before dawn, intending to be on his way without disturbing the household. But as he quietly saddled his horse in the pre-dawn darkness, Amelia appeared at the barn door with a small package wrapped in cloth. "Bread and some smoked venison for your journey," she said, offering it to him. "It's not much, but it's more than enough," Nathan said, accepting the package with genuine gratitude. "Thank you." Amelia hesitated, then spoke in a rush. "I wanted to thank you again. Not just for what you did at the river, but for helping around here. It meant a lot to both of us." Nathan secured the food in his saddlebag. "I'm glad I could help." "Safe travels to Sierra Vista," Amelia said. "I hope you find what you're looking for there." Nathan mounted his horse, looking down at her in the gray light of early morning. For a moment, something held him there, an inexplicable reluctance to ride away. "If you ever find yourself needing help again," he said finally, "the Petersons know how to reach me. I have friends in the area." Amelia nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "Goodbye, Nathan Whitlock." "Goodbye, Amelia Blackburn." He touched the brim of his hat, then turned his horse toward the road, riding east into the rising sun. Neither of them suspected that their paths would cross again far sooner than either expected, or that when they did, it would be under circumstances that would test them both in ways they couldn't imagine. Nathan rode hard for Sierra Vista, stopping only when necessary to rest his horse. The town had grown considerably since he'd last passed through 2 years prior. What had been little more than a trading post now boasted a proper main street with a hotel, saloon, general store, and even a small church under construction at the far end. He made his way to the sheriff's office, a modest building with a jail cell visible through the back window. Sheriff William Tanner was an old friend. They'd served together as deputies in Colorado before Tanner had accepted the position in Sierra Vista. "Well, I'll be damned," Tanner exclaimed when Nathan walked through the door. A man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and a thick mustache, Tanner rose from behind his desk with a broad smile. "Nathan Whitlock, thought you might be dead." "Not for lack of trying on some folks' part," Nathan replied with a grim smile, shaking the offered hand. "Your timing's perfect," Tanner said, gesturing for Nathan to take a seat. "Got your telegram last week about the Blackwood gang. Word is they're planning something big, a train robbery, most likely. The Union Pacific's carrying a gold shipment through here day after tomorrow." Nathan's expression darkened. "That fits with what I heard up north. Blackwood's getting bolder." James Blackwood was the leader of one of the most notorious gangs in the territory. Nathan had been hunting him for nearly 2 years, ever since Blackwood and his men had robbed a bank in Denver, killing 3 people in the process, including Nathan's younger brother, who'd been working as a teller. "How many men does he have now?" Nathan asked. "At least a dozen, maybe more. He's been recruiting." Tanner pulled out a wanted poster showing a hard-faced man with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw. This was his latest addition, Roy Caldwell, mean son of a gun with a fondness for knives. Nathan studied the poster, his jaw tightening. "I ran into 4 men harassing a woman up near the Cheyenne River. One had a scar like this." He traced a line across his cheek. "Could be Caldwell's men," Tanner agreed. "They're known to scout ahead before Blackwood himself shows up." Nathan frowned, thinking of Amelia and her ailing father, alone and vulnerable on their isolated homestead. If those men had been part of the Blackwood gang, they might return, especially after being humiliated. "Listen, Will, there's a homestead up by the Cheyenne River. Blackburn's the name. Father and daughter trying to make a go of it, but the father's ill. If those men were Blackwood scouts." Tanner nodded, understanding immediately. "I'll send a deputy to check on them. In the meantime, let's figure out how we're going to stop this train robbery." For the next day and a half, Nathan and Tanner planned their strategy, recruiting several trusted men from town to help set a trap for the Blackwood gang. They were in the sheriff's office reviewing the plan one final time when the door burst open and a deputy rushed in. "Sheriff, there's been an attack on a homestead up by the Cheyenne River. Place is burning." Nathan was on his feet instantly. "Blackburn's," the deputy nodded grimly. "Got word from a neighbor who spotted the smoke. Said he saw riders heading away from the scene. By the description, could be Blackwood's men." Nathan was already strapping on his gun belt. "Any word on survivors?" "None yet. The Peterson family is heading there now," but Nathan didn't wait to hear more. He turned to Tanner. "I've got to go." "The train will have to wait," Nathan finished, "or handle it without me." Tanner studied his friend's face, then nodded. "Take Johnson and Miller with you. I'll handle things here." Within minutes, Nathan and two deputies were galloping north, pushing their horses as hard as they dared. The entire ride, Nathan's mind was filled with images of Amelia, her strength, her determination, the quiet dignity with which she'd faced adversity. The thought that she might have fallen victim to men like Blackwood's gang. They rode for hours, changing horses at a way station to maintain their pace. As they neared the Blackburn homestead, a plume of smoke was visible on the horizon, dark against the afternoon sky. "There," Nathan pointed, urging his fresh mount to an even faster pace. When they crested the final rise, the scene that greeted them made Nathan's blood run cold. The cabin was a smoldering ruin, the barn partially collapsed, and the corral empty. Several people moved around the property, the Petersons, Nathan assumed, searching for survivors. He dismounted before his horse had fully stopped, striding toward a middle-aged man who appeared to be directing the search efforts. "Mr. Peterson, I'm Nathan Whitlock. What happened here?" The Blackburn's Peterson turned, his face grave. "You're the cowboy Amelia mentioned. The one who helped her at the river." "Yes, where is she?" "And her father?" Peterson gestured toward a wagon where a woman was tending to someone. "Samuel's there. He's alive, but barely. Smoke inhalation, burns on his arms where he tried to fight the men off." "And Amelia?" Nathan asked, his throat tight. Peterson's expression darkened. "They took her. Samuel said there were 6 of them. Came at dawn, set fire to the barn first to draw them out. Samuel tried to fight, but he was too weak. One of them recognized Amelia, said something about settling a score. They knocked Samuel unconscious and left him to burn in the cabin, but he managed to crawl out before the roof collapsed." Cold fury filled Nathan. "Which way did they go?" "South, toward the Black Hills. My wife heard one of them mention a place called Deadwood Gulch." Peterson studied Nathan's face. "You know these men?" "I know who they ride with." Nathan turned to the deputies who had accompanied him. "Johnson, stay here and help the Petersons. Miller, ride back to Sierra Vista and tell Tanner what's happened. Tell him the train robbery was likely a diversion, their real target was somewhere else." "What about you?" Miller asked, though he already seemed to know the answer. "I'm going after Amelia," Nathan said, his voice leaving no room for argument. He strode to his horse, checking his weapons and supplies. Peterson followed him. "You can't go alone. Blackwood's gang is at least a dozen strong." "I won't be alone," Nathan said grimly. "There are settlements between here and Deadwood. I'll gather men as I go." "You care for her," Peterson observed. "Known her only a day and you're willing to ride into certain danger." Nathan paused, then nodded once. "I do, and I would regardless. No one deserves what they'll do to her." He swung into the saddle. "Watch over her father. If I'm successful, she'll need him to still be alive when she returns." With that, he spurred his horse south, following the faint trail left by Blackwood's men. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the plains, but Nathan had no intention of stopping until he found Amelia, or until his horse could go no further. As darkness fell, he allowed himself to remember her face in the firelight, the determination in her eyes, the quiet strength she'd shown in the face of her father's illness. He made himself a solemn promise. He would find her, and he would bring her home safely, no matter the cost to himself. The Blackwood gang had made a grievous error in taking Amelia Blackburn. They had unwittingly given Nathan something he'd lacked in his 2-year hunt for them, a personal stake that went beyond vengeance for his brother. Now, it was about saving someone who, in the span of a single day, had come to mean more to him than he'd thought possible. With the stars emerging overhead to guide his way, Nathan rode on, a lone figure against the vast Dakota wilderness, driven by a determination that would not be denied. The first rays of dawn were breaking over the eastern horizon when Nathan reached the small settlement of Cooper's Creek. Little more than a trading post, blacksmith shop, and a handful of cabins clustered around a communal well, it was nonetheless a place where he might gather information and potentially allies. He rode directly to the trading post, dismounting stiffly after the long night in the saddle. His horse was near exhaustion, foam flecking its mouth despite Nathan's careful pacing. The proprietor, a heavy-set man with an impressive beard, was sweeping the porch when Nathan approached. "Morning, stranger," the man called. "You look like you've been riding hard." "I have," Nathan replied, tying his horse to the hitching post. "I need fresh information and a fresh horse if you've got one for sale." "Might have both," the man said, leaning on his broom. "Name's Cooper. This is my place." Nathan Whitlock. He extended a hand which Cooper shook firmly. "I'm tracking the Blackwood gang. They passed through here yesterday, likely with a woman captive. Young, blonde hair, blue eyes." Cooper's expression darkened. "They were here all right. 6 of them, including one matching Blackwood himself from the wanted posters. Had a woman with them gagged and tied to one of the saddles. Didn't stop long, just enough to water their horses and buy supplies." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Did they say where they were headed?" "Not in so many words, but I overheard them mention Deadwood. There's an abandoned mining camp about halfway there, Broken Spoke, they call it. Used to be a silver operation until the vein ran dry. Would make a good hideout." "How far?" 30 miles due southeast. Rough country." Cooper studied him. "You aiming to take on the whole gang by yourself?" "If I have to," Nathan replied grimly. Cooper scratched his beard thoughtfully. "My son Eli is a fair hand with a rifle. Been deputy in these parts before we moved out here. He might ride with you. And Farley at the smithy served in the war, cool head in a fight." Hope flickered in Nathan's chest. "I'd be grateful for any help. Come on inside." Cooper gestured toward the door. "Get some food in you while I send my boy to fetch Farley. We'll talk strategy." An hour later, Nathan rode out of Cooper's Creek with 2 companions. Eli Cooper, a lanky young man in his 20s with his father's sharp eyes, and Marcus Farley, the blacksmith, a compact, muscular man in his 40s with a cavalry revolver on his hip and a Spencer repeating rifle in his saddle scabbard. Nathan rode a fresh horse, his own left behind to recover at Cooper's stables. They traveled at a steady pace, following an old wagon trail that wound through increasingly rugged terrain. "Tell us more about this woman," Farley said as they rode. "Must be something special for you to be chasing after her like this." "Her name's Amelia Blackburn," Nathan replied, eyes scanning the horizon. "She and her father have a homestead up by the Cheyenne River. Father's ill. 4 of Blackwood's men harassed her a few days back, but I happened along and ran them off." "So this is revenge," Eli observed. "They're taking it out on her because you interfered." "Likely so," Nathan agreed, the guilt weighing heavily on him. "If I hadn't been there." "They'd have done worse right then and there," Farley finished firmly. Don't blame yourself for other men's evil, son. They rode in silence for a time, each man lost in his own thoughts. The terrain grew more difficult: rocky outcroppings, steep ravines, sparse trees clinging to hillsides. It was easy to see why outlaws favored this region. The natural features provided countless places for ambush or concealment. By mid-afternoon, they began to see signs of the mining camp: old claim markers, the occasional piece of abandoned equipment half buried in the soil. They dismounted in a small copse of trees, tethering their horses. "We go on foot from here," Nathan said quietly. "Less chance of being spotted." They crept forward through the underbrush until the camp came into view in the valley below a cluster of dilapidated wooden buildings, including what appeared to be a bunkhouse, an office, and several smaller shacks. A larger structure with a partially collapsed roof had likely been the mill where ore was processed. From their vantage point, they could see horses tethered outside the bunkhouse and smoke rising from the chimney. Two men stood guard at the perimeter, rifles in hand. "I count 7 horses," Illy whispered. "Could be more inside." "That window there," Farley pointed to a small building set apart from the others. "Someone's moving around inside. Could be where they're keeping the girl." Nathan studied the layout, formulating a plan. "We wait until dark." "Farley, you're the best shot. You stay up here and provide cover. Illy and I will work our way down to opposite sides of the camp. When I fire the first shot, you start picking off anyone who comes out of that bunkhouse." "What about the girl?" Illy asked. "I'll get to her," Nathan said, his voice low and determined. "Once I have her, I'll fire 3 shots in quick succession. That's your signal to fall back to the horses." The men nodded, checking their weapons and settling in to wait for nightfall. As the sun began to sink behind the western hills, Nathan's thoughts turned to Amelia. Was she hurt, frightened? Had they harmed her beyond the rough handling during the abduction? He pushed those thoughts aside. He needed to stay focused, stay calm. Getting emotional would only lead to mistakes, and mistakes would get them all killed, including Amelia. Darkness fell, bringing with it a silver of moon and countless stars that provided just enough light to see by. The guards around the camp had built a small fire near the bunkhouse, its glow casting long shadows across the clearing. "It's time," Nathan whispered. He and Illy began their careful descent into the valley, staying low and moving from one bit of cover to the next. They separated at the bottom, Illy heading east while Nathan circled to the west, aiming for the small building where they believed Amelia was being held. Nathan had nearly reached it when he heard voices approaching 2 men, their conversation carrying clearly in the night air. "Blackwood says we move out at dawn," one said. "Take the girl to the hideout in the Black Hills." "Shame we can't have a little fun with her first," the other replied, his tone making Nathan's blood boil. "Pretty little thing like that. Boss's orders. He wants her intact when we get to Deadwood. Says he's got plans." "What kind of plans?" "Didn't say. Just that it involves teaching a lesson to the cowboy who interfered at the river." The men were close now, too close for Nathan to avoid detection. He pressed himself against the wall of the building, drawing his knife rather than his gun. A shot would alert the entire camp too soon. As the first man rounded the corner, Nathan moved with practiced efficiency. One hand clamped over the man's mouth, the other driving the knife between his ribs with a swift, upward thrust. The outlaw went limp almost immediately, and Nathan lowered him silently to the ground. "Ellis, what's taking so long?" The second man appeared, stopping short at the sight of Nathan standing over his companion's body. Nathan lunged forward before the man could shout, driving his shoulder into the outlaw's midsection and sending them both crashing to the ground. They grappled in the dirt, the outlaw reaching for his gun while Nathan fought to keep the weapon holstered. The man was strong, wild with fear and desperation. With a sudden twist, Nathan broke free, drew his own revolver and brought the butt down hard on the outlaw's temple. The man went still. Nathan paused, listening for any sign that the struggle had been heard. When no alarm was raised, he dragged both bodies into the shadows behind the building, then moved to the door. It was locked from the outside, a good sign that someone was being kept prisoner within. He slid the bolt quietly and eased the door open, wincing as hinges creaked in protest. The interior was dark save for a sliver of moonlight through a small, high window. As his eyes adjusted, Nathan could make out a figure huddled in the corner on what appeared to be a pile of old sacks. Amelia. He whispered. The figure stirred, then sat up quickly. "Who's there?" It was her voice, strained, frightened, but unmistakably Amelia's. "It's Nathan," he said, moving toward her. "Nathan Whitlock. I've come to get you out of here, Nathan." Disbelief and hope mingled in her voice. He could see her more clearly now. Her dress was torn, her hair disheveled, and a bruise darkened one cheek, but she was alive and seemingly unharmed otherwise. "How did you find me?" she asked as he knelt beside her, using his knife to cut the ropes binding her wrists. "Followed their trail," he said simply, helping her to her feet. "Can you walk?" "Yes, they didn't. They didn't hurt me, not really, just the bruise when I fought back during the abduction." Her voice trembled slightly. "My father is alive," Nathan assured her. "The Petersons are caring for him. Burns and smoke inhalation, but he survived." Relief washed over her face, visible even in the dim light. "Thank God." "We need to move," Nathan said, checking his revolver. "I have 2 men with me, but we're still outnumbered. Stay close." He led her to the door, peering out cautiously. The camp appeared unchanged, 2 guards still by the fire, the rest presumably in the bunkhouse. "When I fire," he told her quietly, "run for those rocks." He pointed to a boulder-strewn slope at the edge of the camp. "Farley will be covering us from above. Don't stop until you reach the trees at the top." Amelia nodded, her expression resolute despite the fear evident in her eyes. Nathan took a deep breath, then stepped out of the doorway and fired 2 quick shots at the guards by the fire. One fell immediately. The other staggered but managed to shout an alarm before Farley's rifle cracked from the ridge above, silencing him permanently. "Run," Nathan ordered, pushing Amelia toward the rocks as chaos erupted in the camp. The door to the bunkhouse burst open, men spilling out with guns drawn. Nathan fired repeatedly, providing cover as Amelia sprinted across the open ground. Ellie's rifle joined the fight from the eastern edge of the camp, the crossfire catching the outlaws in the open. Nathan backed toward the rocks, still firing. He was halfway there when a bullet tore through his left arm, the impact spinning him around. He stumbled but kept his feet, turning to see James Blackwood himself standing in the bunkhouse doorway, revolver raised for a second shot. Before Blackwood could fire again, Farley's rifle barked from above, the bullet kicking up dirt at the outlaw leader's feet and forcing him back inside. Nathan reached the rocks where Amelia waited, her face pale with concern as she saw the blood soaking his sleeve. "You're hit. It's nothing," he grunted, though the pain was considerable. "Keep moving, up the slope." They scrambled up the rocky incline, bullets whining off stone around them. Ellie appeared from the east, providing additional covering fire as they climbed. When they reached the ridgeline, Nathan fired 3 quick shots into the air, the signal to withdraw. Farley emerged from his position, and together they hurried through the darkness to where their horses waited. "Mount up," Nathan ordered, helping Amelia onto his horse before swinging up behind her, his wounded arm hanging awkwardly at his side. "We need to put distance between us and them before they organize a pursuit." They rode hard through the night, following a different route than the one they'd taken in. By dawn, they had covered nearly 15 miles of rough country, and the horses were beginning to tire. "We need to stop," Farley said as they forded a shallow stream. "Your arm needs attention, and the horses can't go much further without rest." Nathan nodded reluctantly. "There's a line shack about 3 miles east of here. Belongs to the Circle T Ranch. Should be safe enough." They reached the shack as the sun cleared the horizon, a simple one-room structure used by cowboys during roundups. It was dusty but secure, with a small corral for the horses and a stream nearby. While he saw to the horses, Farley helped Nathan inside, where Amelia immediately set about examining his wound. "The bullet went through clean," she said, cutting away his bloodied sleeve with his own knife. "But it needs cleaning and bandaging." Her fingers were gentle but sure as she washed the wound with water from their canteens, then bound it tightly with strips torn from her petticoat. Nathan watched her face as she worked, the concentration in her eyes, the determined set of her mouth. Despite everything she'd endured, she remained strong, capable. "Thank you," he said softly when she'd finished. "Not just for this, for staying calm back there. Many would have panicked." Amelia sat back, her hands stained with his blood. "I was terrified," she admitted. "But falling apart wouldn't have helped either of us." She looked at him directly. "You came for me, you risked your life." "I couldn't leave you with them," Nathan said simply. "But why? You barely know me." Nathan held her gaze, something shifting between them in that moment, an understanding, a recognition. "Sometimes a day is enough to know what matters," he said quietly. Amelia's eyes widened slightly, a flush coloring her cheeks. Before she could respond, Farley entered the shack with Illy close behind. "Horses are settled," Illy reported. "No sign of pursuit yet, but they'll be coming. Blackwood doesn't strike me as the type to let this go." "He isn't," Nathan agreed grimly, accepting a canteen from Farley. "He's been after me for 2 years, ever since I started hunting him for killing my brother in a bank robbery." "Your brother?" Amelia looked up sharply. "Thomas. He was a teller at the First Bank of Denver. Blackwood shot him when he wouldn't open the safe fast enough." Nathan's voice was flat, the old grief tempered by years of pursuit. "I was a deputy then. Spent the last 2 years tracking his gang across 3 territories. And now he has a personal grudge against you," Farley observed. "Used the girl to draw you out." "My interference at the river gave him the perfect opportunity," Nathan nodded. "He probably figured I'd come after her and he could settle both scores at once." "So what now?" Illy asked. "We can't stay here indefinitely." Nathan rose, wincing as the movement pulled at his wound. "We rest today, ride out at dusk. Cooper's Creek is too close, they'll look there first. We head straight for Sierra Vista. Sheriff Tanner will have men ready." "Sierra Vista's 3 days' hard ride," Farley pointed out. 2 if we push it," Nathan countered. "We'll take turns letting the horses rest by doubling up." The discussion was interrupted by a sound outside, the distant thunder of hoofbeats approaching rapidly. "They found us," Illy said, peering through a crack in the wall. "At least 8 riders, coming fast." Nathan cursed under his breath. "They must have picked up our trail at the stream." He turned to Amelia. "Is there a cellar or storage space?" She shook her head. "Just the main room and the lean-to for firewood." "Illy, get the horses into the trees behind the shack," Nathan ordered. "Farley, cover the north approach. Amelia, stay low and reload for us." They took positions at the windows and door, weapons ready. Nathan's wounded arm throbbed, but he could still shoot, and he would need to. The riders appeared at the edge of the clearing, slowing as they approached the shack. James Blackwood was at their head, a tall man with a hawk-like face and cold eyes. He raised a hand, bringing his men to a halt just out of effective rifle range. "Whitlock," he called. I know you're in there. Come out and face me and I'll let the others go. He's lying, Farley muttered. Man like that doesn't leave witnesses. I know, Nathan replied. He raised his voice to call back. Why don't you come a little closer, Blackwood? Make it a fair fight. Blackwood laughed, the sound carrying across the clearing. Always the hero, aren't you, Whitlock? Just like your brother thought he was right before I put a bullet between his eyes. The taunt was designed to enrage him, to make him act rashly. Nathan breathed deeply, controlling his anger. What's your plan here, Blackwood? He called instead. Kill a lawman and 2 citizens. Add that to your wanted poster. The army will hunt you from here to Mexico. Uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face, visible even at a distance. He hadn't expected this response. Farley, Nathan said quietly. On my signal, target the man on Blackwood's right, the one with the rifle. Illy, when you hear Farley's shot, start moving the horses. Amelia and I will provide covering fire. And then what? Amelia asked, her voice steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. Then we run, Nathan said simply. Divide their forces, use the terrain to our advantage. He turned back to the window. Blackwood and his men were conferring, clearly debating their next move. Now, Farley, Nathan said. The blacksmith's rifle cracked, and the outlaw beside Blackwood tumbled from his saddle. Nathan opened fire immediately, targeting the men rather than Blackwood himself. Beside him, Amelia handed him a loaded revolver as he emptied the first, her movements quick and efficient. Chaos erupted in the clearing as the outlaws scattered, some returning fire while others sought cover. Nathan saw Ellie leading the horses through the trees behind the shack, keeping low. Go, he told Amelia, gesturing toward the back door. Get to the horses. Farley and I will be right behind you. She hesitated only briefly before nodding and slipping away. Nathan continued firing, providing cover as Farley backed toward him from his position. They're circling around, Farley reported, trying to flank us. Time to go, Nathan agreed. They retreated through the back door, staying low as bullets splintered the wood around them. Ellie had the horses ready in the trees, Amelia already mounted. Head northeast, Nathan ordered as they swung into their saddles. There's a ravine about a mile from here. We can lose them in the broken country beyond. They rode hard, keeping to the tree line where possible to minimize their visibility. Behind them, shouts and gunfire indicated that Blackwood's men had discovered their escape and were in pursuit. The ravine appeared ahead, a deep cut in the earth with steep sides and a narrow game trail winding down to the bottom. They descended carefully, the horses picking their way over loose shale. If we follow this downstream, Nathan said when they reached the bottom, it opens into a wider valley. Rougher terrain, but better for throwing off pursuit. As if to emphasize his point, bullets began to kick up dirt on the rim of the ravine above them. 2 of Blackwood's men had reached the edge and were firing down at them. Go, Nathan shouted, returning fire to cover their retreat. They spurred their mounts downstream, the ravine walls providing some protection from the gunfire above. After a half-mile, the ravine widened and branched, offering multiple possible routes. Split up, Nathan decided quickly. Illy, you and Farley take the south branch. Amelia stays with me. We'll meet at Cottonwood Creek, the abandoned stage station there. Farley nodded grimly. Watch yourself, Whitlock. That arm won't hold up to much more abuse. I'll be fine, Nathan assured him, though the wound was throbbing painfully now, the bandage soaked through with fresh blood. They parted ways, Ali and Farley veering south while Nathan and Amelia continued east. The sound of pursuit grew fainter behind them, suggesting that Blackwood's men had indeed split up to follow both trails. They rode for hours, pushing the horses as hard as they dared through the difficult terrain. Nathan's strength was flagging, the blood loss and constant jarring of the ride taking their toll. By mid-afternoon, he was swaying in the saddle. "Nathan," Amelia called with concern, riding alongside him. "You need to rest. You've lost too much blood." He shook his head, trying to focus. "Can't stop. Blackwood will find us for certain if you fall from your horse unconscious," she said firmly. "There's a copse of trees ahead. We can stop there briefly, redress your wound." He wanted to argue, but the edges of his vision were growing dark. "All right. Briefly." The small grove offered decent cover, thick underbrush surrounding a cluster of old cottonwoods near a tiny spring. They dismounted, Amelia helping Nathan to sit with his back against a tree trunk while she tended to the horses. When she returned to check his wound, her expression grew grave. "It's bleeding again and there's heat around the edges. Early signs of infection." She cleaned the wound as best she could with water from the spring, then bound it with fresh strips of cloth from her already tattered petticoat. "That should hold for now," she said, sitting back on her heels. "But you need a doctor, Nathan. This is beyond my skills to treat properly." "Cottonwood Creek is still 15 miles, he said, accepting the water she offered him. "If we reach it by nightfall, we can rest there until dawn, then push on to Sierra Vista." Amelia studied his face, the pallor beneath his tan, the pain lines around his mouth and eyes. "You've done enough," she said softly. "More than enough. Let me help you now." Before he could respond, the sound of a breaking twig brought them both to alert attention. Nathan reached for his revolver, but Amelia was faster, drawing the small pistol he'd given her earlier and aiming it toward the sound. A moment later, a figure emerged from the underbrush, not one of Blackwood's men, but a young Lakota woman. She froze at the sight of Amelia's gun, raising her hand slowly. "I mean no harm," she said in careful English. "I saw the blood trail, thought someone might need help." Amelia lowered the gun slightly. "Who are you, Wachowee? My family's camp is nearby." She gestured to the east. "My father is medicine man. He can help your friend." Nathan and Amelia exchanged glances. Trust was a precious commodity in the territory, especially between whites and natives. But Nathan's condition was deteriorating and they had few options. "How far is your camp?" Nathan asked. "Not far." "Less than hour's ride." Wachowee studied him critically. "But you should not ride. I will bring my father here." "Blackwood's men are hunting us," Amelia explained. "It's not safe to stay in one place too long." Understanding dawned in Wachowee's eyes. "Bad men on horses. We saw them. My brothers are leading them away from here, north toward the hills." A small, satisfied smile touched her lips. "They will chase shadows for many hours." Hope flickered in Amelia's chest. "Can you really bring help?" Wachowee nodded. "Wait here, hide your horses better. I return soon." With that, she disappeared back into the underbrush as silently as she had appeared. "Can we trust her?" Amelia wondered aloud once she was gone. Nathan leaned his head back against the tree. "Don't think we have much choice." Amelia moved the horses deeper into the grove, concealing them as best she could, then returned to Nathan's side. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. "Nathan," she said, touching his face gently. "Stay with me." His eyes flickered open. "Not going anywhere," he murmured. "Just resting." Amelia settled beside him, her shoulder touching his. "When this is over," she said quietly, "what will you do? Will you keep hunting Blackwood?" Nathan was silent for a long moment. "For 2 years, that's been my only purpose," he finally said. "Tracking him, gathering evidence, building a case, it consumed me." He turned to look at her, his gaze intense despite his weakened state. "But now, I'm not so sure." "What changed?" she asked, though something in her heart already knew the answer. "I found something else worth fighting for." The simple statement hung between them. profound in its implications. Amelia felt her heartbeat quicken, a flutter of something both frightening and exhilarating in her chest. Before she could respond, sounds of approach broke the moment, several people moving through the underbrush, making no attempt at stealth. Amelia raised the pistol again, positioning herself protectively in front of Nathan. Wachowee appeared first, followed by an elderly Lakota man carrying a medicine bundle and two younger men armed with rifles. "My father," Wachowee introduced, gesturing to the elder, "and my brothers, who have led the bad men far from here." The medicine man approached without hesitation, kneeling beside Nathan and examining the wound with practiced hands. He spoke rapidly in Lakota to Wachowee, who translated. "He says the wound is angry but not yet consumed by bad spirits. He can draw out the heat and stop the bleeding, but healing will take time." "Time we don't have," Nathan said weakly. Wachowee conferred with her father again. "He says you can be moved once he has treated you. Our winter camp is hidden in a sacred valley. The bad men will not find you there." Amelia hesitated, torn between the need to get Nathan proper treatment and the promised rendezvous with Ely and Farley. "Your friends," Wachowee said, seeming to read her thoughts. "My brothers can leave a sign at this Cottonwood Creek. Tell them where to find you." Nathan reached for Amelia's hand, his grip surprisingly strong despite his condition. "Trust them," he said simply. And so she did. The Lakota winter camp was indeed well hidden, a cluster of tipis set in a sheltered valley accessible only by a narrow, winding trail. The band was small, perhaps 20 people in all, who received the strangers with cautious hospitality at the urging of Wachowee's father, Maka. Nathan was installed in a tipi near the center of camp, where Maka treated his wound with poultices of herbs that drew out the infection and eased the pain. Amelia remained constantly at his side, helping change the dressings and coaxing him to eat the nourishing broth Wachowee prepared. On the second day, Ely and Farley arrived, guided by Wachowee's brothers. They brought news that Blackwood's gang had split up, some continuing the search while others, including Blackwood himself, had been spotted heading toward Sierra Vista. "The train," Nathan said when they told him, struggling to sit up despite Amelia's protests. "The gold shipment, he'll still try to take it." "Sheriff Tanner is prepared," Farley assured him. "We sent a rider ahead yesterday with warning." Nathan subsided, though the worry remained evident in his eyes. "How soon can I travel?" Maka, who understood more English than he spoke, shook his head firmly and said something to Wachowee. "3 more days," she translated. "The wound heals, but moving too soon will tear it open again." Nathan frowned but didn't argue. The fever had broken overnight, and the angry redness around the wound had diminished considerably under Maka's care. Amelia could see that his strength was returning, but he was still far from ready for hard riding. 3 days, then, he agreed reluctantly. That evening, while Nathan slept, Amelia sat with Wachowee by the central fire, watching as the young woman worked on a beaded moccasin. "Your man is strong," Wachowee observed, not looking up from her work. "Strong body, stronger spirit." "He's not my man," Amelia corrected automatically, though the words felt hollow even to her own ears. Wachowee smiled knowingly. "The way you look at him says different." Amelia flushed but didn't deny it. "It's complicated. Love always is." Wachowee set aside her beating. "My people say that souls recognize each other from past lives. Some connections are written in the stars before we are born." "You believe that?" Amelia asked. "I believe what I see," Wachowee replied simply. "And I see 2 souls that found each other despite great distances and many obstacles." She tilted her head, studying Amelia. "What will you do when he is well? Return to your homestead?" The question caught Amelia off guard. She hadn't thought beyond ensuring Nathan's recovery and escaping Blackwood's pursuit. The homestead seemed like a lifetime ago now. "I don't know," she admitted. "There's not much left to return to, and my father needs care I can't provide alone." "Yet you must decide," Watchowee said gently. "As must he." 3 days passed, and Nathan grew stronger under Maka's care and Amelia's attentive nursing. By the 4th morning, he was able to walk around the camp unaided, his arm in a sling but the wound clean and healing well. Ellie and Farley had departed the previous day, returning to Cooper's Creek with promises to send word if there was any news of Blackwood or developments in Sierra Vista. Nathan chafed at the inactivity, but even he couldn't deny that the rest had been necessary. "We should leave tomorrow," he told Amelia as they walked slowly at the edge of the camp. "Head for Sierra Vista, check on your father at the Petersons, then decide our next move." Amelia nodded, though anxiety knotted in her stomach at the thought of leaving the safety of the hidden valley. "Do you think Blackwood is still looking for us?" "Probably," Nathan admitted. "He's not the type to let go of a grudge, but he's also practical. If the train robbery goes forward, that will be his priority." They stopped at a point overlooking the valley, the camp spread out below them. Children played between the tippies while women worked at cooking fires or tanning hides. It was a peaceful scene, a way of life increasingly under threat as more settlers pushed into the territory. "I've been thinking," Amelia said after a comfortable silence, "about what happens after, when this is all over." Nathan turned to look at her, his expression curious. "And the homestead was my father's dream, not mine," she said slowly, working through thoughts that had been forming over the past days. "I stayed because he needed me, because it was all we had. But now you're considering other possibilities," Nathan finished for her. She nodded. "The world seems bigger now, more full of both danger and opportunity than I realized." She met his gaze directly. "What about you? Will you keep chasing Blackwood if he escapes this time?" Nathan was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the distant horizon. "For 2 years, hunting Blackwood was all I had, all I thought I needed." He looked back at her, his expression softening. "But something's changed." "What?" she asked, though her heart was suddenly beating faster. "Me," he said simply. "Or maybe how I see the future." "Revenge doesn't build anything, Amelia. It just keeps you tied to the past." The significance of his words washed over her. Before she could respond, a commotion from the camp drew their attention. Watchowee was running toward them, her expression urgent. "Riders coming," she called. "Many riders." "Not my people." Nathan's hand went immediately to his revolver. "Blackwood?" "No," Watchowee shook her head. "Men wearing stars, lawmen." Relief and confusion mingled in Nathan's expression. "From Sierra Vista, that's nearly a day's ride from here." They hurried back to camp, where a party of 6 mounted men was just arriving, led by none other than Sheriff William Tanner himself. He dismounted quickly when he spotted Nathan, striding forward with a broad grin. "Thought we might find you here," he said, clasping Nathan's hand. "Your friends Cooper and Farley told us where to look." "Will," Nathan greeted him with genuine pleasure. "What brings you all this way?" "The train is safe," Tanner assured him. "Blackwood and his gang tried to hit it yesterday, right on schedule, walked straight into our trap." His grin widened. "We got them, Nathan. All of them. Blackwood's in my jail as we speak, along with most of his men. A few died in the attempt, including that scarred fellow Caldwell." The news struck Nathan like a physical blow. 2 years of pursuit ended in a battle he hadn't even been present for. "You're certain it's Blackwood?" he asked, needing confirmation. "In person?" "Oh, it's him all right," Tanner nodded. "I've got 3 witnesses from Denver coming to identify him formally, but there's no doubt. His luck finally ran out." Amelia watched as the news sank in, a complex array of emotions crossing Nathan's face: relief, disbelief, and something that looked almost like confusion. "It's over," she said softly, touching his arm. He looked at her, then back at Tanner. "My brother will have justice," Tanner finished. "Blackwood will hang Nathan. For the Denver robbery and killings, for the attack on Miss Blackburn's homestead, for all of it. It's done." The finality of those words seemed to resonate through Nathan. The mission that had driven him for 2 years was complete, the purpose that had sustained him fulfilled. He stood at the threshold of a life suddenly free of the burden of vengeance. "Miss Blackburn," Tanner turned to Amelia with a more somber expression, "I have news about your father as well. He's been moved to Sierra Vista for treatment. Doc Jenkins is seeing to him." "Is he stable?" Tanner assured her. "The Petersons got him to town in time. Burns are healing, but the lung damage from the smoke." He hesitated. "Doc says he'll need careful nursing for some time. Perhaps permanently." The news wasn't unexpected, but it still hit Amelia hard. Her father would never be able to work the homestead again, would never see his dream of prosperity on that harsh land fulfilled. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly. "We'll leave for Sierra Vista immediately." Tanner nodded. "That's why we came, to escort you back safely, though it seems the danger is past now." He glanced around at the Lakota camp. "We should thank these people for their help before we go." With Wachowee translating, formal thanks were offered to Maka and the band for their assistance and hospitality. The medicine man accepted with dignity, then approached Nathan directly, placing a hand on his shoulder and speaking at length in Lakota. "He says your body is healed, but your spirit stands at a crossroads," Wachowee translated. "The path of revenge is closed to you now. You must choose a new path, one that builds rather than destroys." Nathan nodded solemnly. "Tell him I understand, and that I'm grateful for his wisdom as well as his healing." As they prepared to depart, gathering the few belongings they had and readying horses provided by Tanner's men, Amelia found a moment alone with Wachowee. "Thank you," she said, clasping the young woman's hands, "for everything. Your family saved Nathan's life and possibly mine as well." Wachowee smiled. "Some debts cannot be measured or repaid. They can only be acknowledged and then passed forward to others in need." She glanced toward Nathan, who was checking the saddle on Amelia's horse. "He has found his new path, I think. Have you found yours?" Amelia followed her gaze, watching as Nathan moved with the easy grace that had first caught her attention by the river. "I believe I have," she said softly. The journey to Sierra Vista took a day and a half at a measured pace that accommodated Nathan's still healing wound. They traveled with the security of Tanner's deputies surrounding them, making camp once along the way. During that night, as they sat by the fire after the others had retired, Nathan finally spoke of what had been on his mind since Tanner's news. "For so long, catching Blackwood was all that mattered," he said, staring into the flames. "I thought it would bring me peace, that it would somehow make Thomas's death right." He looked up at Amelia. "But now that it's done, I realize the emptiness was never about Blackwood. It was about what comes after." "And what does come after?" she asked gently. "That's what I've been asking myself." He shifted to face her more directly. "When I saw you by that river, standing against those men with nothing but a small knife and your own courage, something changed for me. For the first time in 2 years, I wanted to protect something, not just destroy." Amelia's breath caught at the intensity in his eyes. "Nathan, let me finish," he said, his voice low but urgent. "These past days, watching you care for me, seeing your strength and your heart, I've come to realize what I want after. And it's a chance to build something with you, Amelia. If you'll have me." The directness of his declaration caught her off guard, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Nathan Whitlock was not a man to dance around what mattered. "We barely know each other," she said, though her heart was racing. "I know enough," he replied with simple certainty. "I know you're brave and kind and fiercer than anyone has a right to expect. I know you put others before yourself, even to your own detriment sometimes. I know that when I'm with you, the world makes sense in a way it hasn't since before Thomas died." He reached for her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "I'm not asking for promises right now, just a chance to see where this leads, to find out if what I feel, what I think we both feel, is as real as it seems." Amelia looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face, earnest, open, vulnerable in a way she suspected few people ever saw. "When my mother died," she said slowly, "my father and I came west because there was nothing left for us back east. All these years I've been helping him chase his dream of a successful homestead." She squeezed his hand. "But I've never had a dream of my own, never allowed myself to want something just for me. And now," he prompted when she paused, "now I think I do." She met his gaze steadily. "I want to see where this leads to. I want to know if what I'm feeling is as real and as lasting as it seems." The smile that spread across Nathan's face was like sunrise breaking over the plains, radiant and full of promise. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "That's all I ask," he said softly. "For now." They arrived in Sierra Vista the following afternoon, the small town a welcome sight after their journey. Word of their approach had spread, and a small crowd gathered to witness their arrival. Blackwood's capture and the dramatic rescue of Amelia Blackburn had become the talk of the territory. Their first stop was the doctor's office, where Samuel Blackburn was recovering. The reunion between father and daughter was emotional, with Amelia falling to her knees beside his bed, clasping his thin hands in hers. "I thought I'd lost you," Samuel said weakly, tears in his rheumy eyes. "When they took you, I'm safe, Pa," she assured him. "Thanks to Nathan and his friends." Samuel's gaze shifted to Nathan, who stood respectfully at a distance. "Mr. Whitlock, it seems I owe you my daughter's life twice over now." Nathan shook his head. "She saved herself as much as I saved her, sir. Your daughter is quite remarkable." "That she is," Samuel agreed with evident pride. His expression grew more serious. "Doctor says my lungs won't ever be the same. Can't work the land anymore, even if the homestead could be rebuilt." "Don't worry about that now, Pa," Amelia soothed. "We'll figure something out." Dr. Jenkins, who had been observing from the doorway, stepped forward. "Your father needs rest, Miss Blackburn. You can return tomorrow. For now, I believe Sheriff Tanner has arranged rooms for you at the hotel." Amelia was reluctant to leave, but the doctor was firm. After promising to return first thing in the morning, she allowed Nathan to escort her to the Sierra Vista Hotel, a modest two-story building on the town's main street. As they walked, Nathan brought up a matter that had been on his mind. "Your father's right about the homestead. Even if you rebuilt, working it alone would be nearly impossible, and with your father needing ongoing care." "I know," Amelia sighed. 3 years of work gone in a single day." "Not entirely gone," Nathan countered. "The land is still yours. You could sell it, use the money to start fresh somewhere else." "Perhaps," she acknowledged. "But where? Doing what?" They had reached the hotel, pausing at the bottom of the steps. Nathan seemed about to say more when Sheriff Tanner approached from the direction of the jail. "Nathan, Miss Blackburn," he greeted them. "Getting settled in." "Just about to," Nathan replied. "Any news from the jail?" "That's actually why I was looking for you. Blackwood's asking to see you." Nathan's expression hardened. "Why would I want to see him?" "He says he has information." "Something about your brother." Tanner shrugged apologetically. "Probably just trying to bargain for his life, but I thought you should know." Nathan was silent for a moment, conflicting emotions playing across his face. Amelia touched his arm lightly. "You want me to come with you?" she asked. The offer seemed to center him. He covered her hand with his own. "No, this is something I need to do alone." He turned to Tanner. "Let's get it over with." "I'll wait for you inside," Amelia said, understanding his need for closure. Nathan nodded gratefully, then followed Tanner toward the jailhouse. James Blackwood sat in the corner cell, separated from the rest of his captured gang. He looked smaller somehow, less imposing than Nathan had imagined during 2 years of pursuit. When Nathan entered, Blackwood rose from his cot, approaching the bars with a smirk that didn't quite hide the fear in his eyes. "Whitlock," he acknowledged. "Surprised you came." "What do you want, Blackwood?" Nathan asked coldly. "Make it quick." "Just wanted to see the man who finally brought me down." Blackwood studied him. "Though from what I hear, you weren't even there for the main event, too busy playing hero for that homesteader girl." "If that's all you have to say, your brother," Blackwood interrupted. "Thomas." "He wasn't just a random teller." Nathan stiffened. "What are you talking about? He was working with us. Helped plan the whole job." Blackwood's smirk widened at Nathan's shock. "Oh, he didn't tell you." "Your righteous little brother was supposed to make sure the vault was open, the guards distracted. But he got cold feet at the last minute. That's why I shot him." "You're lying," Nathan said through clenched teeth, though a seed of doubt had been planted. "Am I?" "Ask yourself why a small-town bank teller was suddenly hired at Denver's biggest bank just 2 weeks before the robbery. How we knew exactly when the gold shipment would arrive. How we got the vault combination." Blackwood leaned closer to the bars. "Your brother wasn't the saint you think he was, Whitlock. He was greedy, just like the rest of us. Just lost his nerve at the wrong moment." Nathan lunged forward, grabbing Blackwood by the shirt collar and slamming him against the bars. "You don't get to talk about him. You don't even get to say his name." Tanner hurried forward, pulling Nathan back. "That's enough," Blackwood laughed, a harsh sound despite the blood trickling from where his lip had split against the metal bars. "Truth hurts, doesn't it, Whitlock? All this time chasing me, and you never knew you were avenging a would-be thief." "Get me out of here," Nathan growled to Tanner, already turning away. "Before I do something we'll both regret." Outside the jail, Nathan paced the boardwalk, struggling to process what he'd heard. Could there be any truth to Blackwood's claims? Thomas had indeed taken the job at the Denver bank shortly before the robbery, claiming it was a step up from his previous position. But the idea that he'd been involved in planning the heist seemed inconceivable. "Nathan." He turned to find Amelia approaching, concern evident in her expression. "I saw you come out," she explained. "You looked upset. What happened?" Nathan hesitated, uncertain whether to burden her with Blackwood's accusations. But something in her steady gaze encouraged honesty. "Blackwood claims my brother was involved in planning the robbery," he said finally. "That Thomas was working with them but backed out at the last minute." "Do you believe him?" Amelia asked, her voice neutral. "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "Thomas was struggling after the war. Gambling debts, drinking too much. But robbery, murder, I can't reconcile that with the brother I knew." Amelia stepped closer, taking his hands in hers. "Blackwood is facing the gallows, Nathan. He has every reason to try to hurt you, to taint your victory and your memory of your brother." "I know that," he nodded. "But there are details that fit, things I never questioned before." "Then perhaps it's time to find answers," she suggested. "Not from Blackwood, but from those who knew Thomas in Denver, the other bank employees, his friends." Nathan looked at her with growing appreciation. Where he'd expected judgment or platitudes, she'd offered practical guidance. "You're right," he said. "I need to know the truth, whatever it is." He squeezed her hands gently. "But first, there are more immediate matters to resolve." Your father, the homestead. One day at a time, Amelia reminded him. That's all any of us can manage. Nathan smiled faintly. When did you get so wise? I've had some difficult teachers these past few days, she replied with a small smile of her own. They walked together back to the hotel, the weight of Blackwood's revelation still heavy on Nathan's shoulders, but somehow made lighter by Amelia's steady presence beside him. The next 2 weeks saw significant changes for both Nathan and Amelia. Samuel Blackburn's condition stabilized under Dr. Jenkins' care, though it became increasingly clear that he would never fully recover. The doctor recommended a drier, warmer climate, perhaps Arizona or New Mexico territory, to ease his breathing difficulties. Meanwhile, Ellie Cooper returned to Sierra Vista with news that he had found a buyer for the Blackburn homestead, a family from Minnesota, with 3 strong sons who were looking to establish themselves in the territory. The price was fair, especially considering the damage to the buildings, and would provide Amelia and her father with enough funds to start fresh elsewhere. Nathan, for his part, had been offered a position as Tanner's deputy. The growing town needed more law enforcement, and Nathan's experience made him an ideal candidate. He'd asked for time to consider, pending his investigation into Blackwood's claims about Thomas. On a warm afternoon in early May, Nathan and Amelia sat together on the hotel's small porch, discussing these developments. Arizona would be good for your father, Nathan observed. Sierra Vista has been growing steadily. The climate is ideal for lung ailments, and with the railroad coming through next year, there will be plenty of opportunities. Amelia nodded, watching the activity on the main street. Pa's been talking about opening a small bookshop, teaching reading to the local children on the side. It suits him better than farming ever did, if I'm honest. And you? Nathan asked, studying her profile. What would suit you? She turned to face him, a new confidence in her expression that hadn't been there when they first met. I've been thinking about that, Mrs. Tanner mentioned that the town council is looking to hire a proper schoolteacher. With Pa's background, he could help me prepare for such a position. You'd make an excellent teacher, Nathan said with genuine admiration. Perhaps. She hesitated, then continued. But that depends on whether there's a reason for me to stay in Sierra Vista, or near it, at least. The implication was clear. In the past 2 weeks, their connection had deepened through shared experiences and quiet conversations. They'd been careful, respectful of propriety and the recentness of their acquaintance, but there was no denying the growing attachment between them. I've been thinking about that too, Nathan admitted. Tanner's offer is tempting, but I need to resolve this business with my brother first. I'm leaving for Denver tomorrow to speak with Thomas's former colleagues at the bank. How long will you be gone? Amelia asked, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. A week, perhaps 2. He reached for her hand. But I'll come back, Amelia. Whatever I discover in Denver, I'll return to tell you face to face. And then, if you'll still have me, I'd like to court you properly. The formal phrase sounded almost quaint coming from him, but the sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. No rushing, no pressure. We'll take the time to truly know each other, to be certain this is what we both want. Amelia smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. I'd like that very much. The following morning, Nathan departed for Denver, carrying with him Amelia's promise to wait for his return. During his absence, Amelia and her father finalized the sale of their homestead and began making plans for the move to Arizona. Dr. Jenkins recommended a stagecoach journey with frequent stops to accommodate Samuel's condition, estimating they could reach Sierra Vista by early June if they traveled at a measured pace. 2 weeks after his departure, Nathan returned to town, riding directly to the hotel where Amelia and her father were staying. She was on the porch when he arrived, having taken to spending her afternoons there in hopes of seeing him. One look at his face told her he had found answers in Denver, though whether they had brought him peace was less certain. She rose to meet him as he dismounted, noting the weariness in his movements. "You're back," she said simply, relief evident in her voice. "As promised." He managed a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Samuel Blackburn appeared in the doorway behind them. "Mr. Whitlock, good to see you returned safely." Nathan nodded respectfully. "Mr. Blackburn, you're looking better." "The doctor says I'm well enough to travel now," Samuel replied. "We've been making arrangements for the journey to Arizona." "Sierra Vista?" Nathan asked, looking between them. Amelia nodded. "We decided it would be best. The climate will help pause breathing, and there are opportunities for both of us there." Something shifted in Nathan's expression, hope, perhaps, or resolve. "That's good news. I have some matters to discuss with you both if you have time." They settled in the hotel's small dining room, relatively private at this hour between lunch and dinner. Nathan declined refreshment, seemingly eager to share what he'd learned. "I spoke with the bank manager in Denver," he began, "and several of Thomas's colleagues. What I discovered—" He paused, organizing his thoughts. Blackwood wasn't entirely lying, but neither was he telling the whole truth. "Go on," Amelia encouraged gently. "Thomas was approached by one of Blackwood's men, a fellow who presented himself as a businessman interested in the bank's security procedures. He asked questions, showed interest in when gold shipments arrive, that sort of thing." Nathan's expression darkened. Thomas was naive, not corrupt. He answered questions he shouldn't have, possibly shared information he shouldn't have, but he didn't knowingly participate in planning the robbery. "He was used," Samuel observed. "Yes," Nathan nodded. "When he realized what was happening, likely the day of the robbery itself, he tried to stop it. That's why Blackwood killed him. Not because Thomas was an accomplice who lost his nerve, but because he was trying to alert the guards." "So your brother died trying to do the right thing," Amelia said softly. "In the end, yes." Nathan looked down at his hands. "He made mistakes, trusted the wrong people, but he wasn't the criminal Blackwood painted him to be." He looked up again, meeting their gazes. "Knowing that, it changes things for me, gives me a clearer path forward." "What path is that?" Amelia asked, though her heart was already quickening with anticipation. "I've accepted Sheriff Tanner's offer," Nathan said. "With one condition, that I be appointed as the law in Sierra Vista itself, rather than the wider county. It would mean a more settled life, building something rather than chasing outlaws across the territories." The implication wasn't lost on either of his listeners. Samuel glanced between Nathan and his daughter, a knowing look in his eyes. "Sounds like a fine position for a man looking to put down roots," he observed. "Sierra Vista would be fortunate to have you." He rose slowly from his chair. "If you'll excuse me, I find I need to rest before dinner. Perhaps you two might continue this conversation without an old man's interference." With that transparent excuse, he left them alone, the door closing softly behind him. Amelia couldn't help but smile. Subtle, he is not. "I appreciate his approval nonetheless," Nathan replied, his own expression lightening. "Amelia, I meant what I said about courting you properly. No rushing, no pressure." "I know," she assured him. "And I want that too, time to be certain, to build something solid. But—" he prompted, sensing there was more she wanted to say. "But I also know my own mind and heart," she continued with quiet confidence. "These past weeks without you, I've had time to reflect on everything that's happened since that day by the river. On who I was before I met you and who I am becoming." She met his gaze directly. I like who I am when I'm with you, Nathan. I feel stronger, more myself. I feel the same way, he admitted, reaching across the table to take her hand. More complete somehow. As if I'd been walking through the world with only half a soul and found the rest in you. The poetry of his words surprised them both. Nathan had never considered himself eloquent, yet with Amelia, the deepest truths seemed to find their way to the surface. "So what now?" she asked. "We both go to Sierra Vista. You take the sheriff's position, I pursue teaching, and we court." "Yes," he nodded, "for as long as it takes to be sure." He hesitated, then added with a hint of his characteristic directness, "Though I should warn you, I'm already fairly certain." The confession brought a flush to Amelia's cheeks and a smile to her lips. "As am I, but I appreciate the time all the same." "Then it's settled," Nathan said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "We begin again in Sierra Vista. Together, but at a pace that honors what's growing between us." "Together," Amelia agreed, the word holding both promise and certainty. The journey to Sierra Vista took 2 weeks, with frequent stops to accommodate Samuel's condition. Nathan accompanied them, having arranged for his badge and official appointment to be waiting in Arizona. The travel was challenging, but brought its own rewards. Evenings spent in conversation around campfires, shared meals at way stations, the gradual building of a bond that went beyond the initial attraction and dramatic circumstances of their meeting. By the time they reached their destination in early June, the tentative courtship had blossomed into something neither could deny nor wish to delay. The town welcomed them warmly, Samuel with his plans for a bookshop and reading lessons, Amelia with her application for the teaching position, and Nathan as their new sheriff. They settled into the rhythm of life in Sierra Vista with surprising ease. Samuel rented rooms above what would become his bookshop, regaining strength in the dry desert air. Amelia was hired to teach in the new schoolhouse being built at the edge of town, starting with the fall term. Nathan took to his duties with the same quiet competence he brought to everything, quickly earning the respect of the townspeople. Their courtship progressed steadily through the summer months. Chaperoned walks after church on Sundays, shared meals with Samuel, occasional picnics with the Tanners or other friends they made in town. By August, when the summer heat was at its peak, Nathan knew with absolute certainty what his heart had suspected that first day by the Cheyenne River. On a Sunday evening in late August, as they sat on the porch of what was now Samuel's bookshop and lending library, Nathan took Amelia's hand in his. "You remember what you said, back in May, about knowing your own mind and heart?" he asked. "I do," she nodded, her expression curious. "I've been thinking about that conversation a lot lately," he continued. "About taking time, being certain." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet pouch. "And I find that I am certain, Amelia, more certain than I've ever been of anything." Her breath caught as he opened the pouch, revealing a simple gold band set with a small diamond that caught the last rays of the setting sun. "This was my mother's," he explained. "I've carried it with me since she died, waiting for the day I'd find someone who embodies the same strength, kindness, and wisdom she did." He held her gaze steadily. "I've found that in you, Amelia, not just those qualities, but so much more. You've shown me a way forward when I was lost in the past. You've reminded me that life is for building, not just surviving." He slid from the porch swing to one knee before her, the ring held between them. "Amelia Blackburn, I love you. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, but her smile was radiant. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Nathan Whitlock. I love you, and I would be proud to be your wife." He slipped the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. as if destined, then rose to sit beside her again, drawing her into a tender kiss that sealed their promise. Samuel, watching discreetly from inside the shop, wiped a tear from his own eye before stepping out to join them. "I believe congratulations are in order," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I should have asked your permission properly, sir," Nathan said, rising respectfully. Samuel waved the formality away. "You've had my blessing since the day you stood between my daughter and danger by that river." He clasped Nathan's hand firmly. "I couldn't ask for a finer man for Amelia." The wedding took place in October, after the summer heat had abated and Amelia had settled into her teaching position. It was a modest affair held in the newly completed church, with the entire town turning out to celebrate. Sheriff William Tanner and his wife traveled from the Dakota Territory to stand as Nathan's witnesses, while Amelia was attended by the doctor's wife and several new friends from town. Samuel, healthier than he'd been in years thanks to the Arizona climate, proudly walked his daughter down the aisle, his eyes glistening with tears of joy as he placed her hand in Nathan's. The couple exchanged vows written in their own words, promises not just of love and fidelity, but of partnership, of building a life together founded on mutual respect and shared dreams. When Nathan placed the gold band on Amelia's finger to join her engagement ring, his hands were steady, his voice clear and certain. "I, Nathan Whitlock, take you, Amelia Blackburn, as my wife, my partner, my heart's companion. I promise to stand beside you in joy and sorrow, to protect without confining, to support without controlling. I pledge to you my strength, my loyalty, my understanding, and my unconditional love from this day forward, for all the days of our lives." Amelia's voice trembled slightly as she responded with her own vows, but her eyes never left his. "I, Amelia Blackburn, take you, Nathan Whitlock, as my husband, my partner, my soul's match. I promise to walk beside you through all of life's journeys, to offer comfort in hardship and celebration in triumph. I pledge to you my strength, my loyalty, my understanding, and my unconditional love from this day forward, for all the days of our lives." The reception was held in the town square, with tables laden with food contributed by nearly every household in Sierra Vista. As the sun set, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the celebration. Music from fiddles and guitars filled the air as couples danced on a wooden platform constructed specially for the occasion. Nathan and Amelia moved among their guests, accepting congratulations and well wishes. When they finally found a moment alone, stepping away from the festivities to catch their breath, Nathan drew his new wife close. "Happy?" he asked softly. "Completely," she assured him, her eyes reflecting the lantern light. "And you?" "More than I ever thought possible." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "If someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be standing here, sheriff of a growing town, married to the most remarkable woman I've ever met, I wouldn't have believed them." "Life has a way of surprising us," Amelia observed, leaning into his embrace. "6 months ago, I was washing my father's shirts in a river, wondering how we'd manage another season on that hardscrabble land." Nathan's expression grew thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it? Losing the homestead, I mean." "Never," she said with certainty. "That was my father's dream, not mine. This," she gestured to encompass the town, "their new life. This is where we were meant to be, where I was meant to be. With you." They sealed this affirmation with a kiss, oblivious to the knowing smiles of the townspeople who observed the newlyweds' private moment. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges to the Whitlocks. Nathan served as Sierra Vista's sheriff with distinction, his fair-minded approach to law enforcement earning him respect throughout the territory. Amelia thrived as a teacher, eventually becoming headmistress of the growing school as the town expanded with the arrival of the railroad. Samuel's bookshop became a center of community learning, with reading circles for adults and children alike. His health, while never robust, stabilized in the dry climate, allowing him to enjoy his role as educator and, eventually, grandfather. For in the spring of 1879, Amelia gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas Samuel Whitlock, honoring both Nathan's brother and Amelia's father. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family, Elizabeth Grace Whitlock, with her mother's golden hair and her father's thoughtful blue eyes. As Sierra Vista grew from a frontier town into a proper city, the Whitlocks grew with it, becoming pillars of the community while never forgetting the dramatic circumstances that had brought them together. On each anniversary, they would share with their children the story of how 4 men had surrounded their mother at a river, and how their father had appeared to make them scatter, the beginning of a love that had transformed not just 2 lives, but an entire community. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the desert stars shone brilliantly overhead, Nathan and Amelia would sit together on the porch of the home they'd built, hands intertwined, marveling at the twists of fate that had led them to each other, and at the remarkable life they'd created together, a life built on courage, commitment, and a love that had begun in danger but flourished in the peace they'd found with each other.